Is it a new phone?
It is a new phone.
New phone, ooh.
It's got AI built into it of no use whatsoever. It does things like summarising your emails. Yeah. So you're reading them twice.
It summarises it. You don't trust it, do you?
It gets it wrong, Grogmeat.
Yeah.
So I've gone through the list and contacted it. And it said, Grogmeat unable to attend. And I thought, oh, right, okay, I looked down. It doesn't say that at all. What it says is that planning on coming, but it's an open day at college and he's trying to get cover.
So he might be coming.
He might be coming.
Yeah.
The AI's told me that it's not coming.
AI. That's what it's saying then, no. AI.
Bobbins.
Have you seen me dice bag? The Grognard Files.
Hello, my name is Dirk the Dice, and this is the Grognard Files podcast, where we talk bobbins about tabletop RPGs from back in the day and today. I'm coming live from my den here in the heart of the northwest of England. I'm completely surrounded by my stuff. This podcast is hot on the heels of the recent Ben Aaronovitch interview about the Rivers of London RPG. And you can see this as a little bit on the side. You know, something that's been stuffed into a second-hand copy of Rivers of London that you can't quite work out its significance. Is it a shopping list? Is it a receipt? A recipe? Or the ramblings of fools? I've had a bit of a clear out. The futon has gone from the den. It was one of those items of furniture which was useless. Whichever way you looked at it, it was rubbish as a seat because it was hard on your arse, and rubbish as a bed because it was hard on everything else. But it was an extraordinary clutter collector. Now that it's gone, it allows me a bit more freedom to roll on my office chair. If I roll back now, I can get a few feet before the fish tank gets it. I have to do a slalom around the piles of books, of course, that remain here, despite of the new bookshelves. I have told you about the new bookshelves, haven't I? In this episode, I'm joined in the room of role-playing rambling by Judge Blythe, our resident rules lawyer, and we cast our eyes over a year on the grog, the ups and downs, highlights and lowlights of playing in 2024. It was good to have an in-person chat, face-to-face, in the cold attic space, clutching a hot brew and some slightly shop-damaged hobnobs. Ramblers, let's get rambling.
Groggies. 2024.
Welcome to the room of role-playing rambling. And it is a rare occasion where we are in the room. We're up in the attic with the one-eyed pigeon tapping on the window like Tiny Tim. And it is cold.
It is cold. Freezing cold. It is, isn't it?
There's no heating on in this room.
Hypothermia. The heat's broken up here.
Yeah.
But it is quiet.
It is quiet,
You've got to,
take the rough with the smooth, as they say.
Yeah.
And we were going to enjoy the delights of some non-alcoholic beer to celebrate.
In the fridge, in the works fridge, there are 2 tins of non-alcoholic beer, which is okay, actually. It doesn't taste, it's not, we've moved on from the days of Calibre, haven't we, that tasted like potatoes and or mushy peas or something.
Yeah.
We've moved on from that. It's all right, but it's so cold up here. We've got a brew to keep us alive.
Yeah, just to
keep us thawed out.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'd be like McCready in The Thing, wouldn't we? Yeah, it's that time of the year. We're on a bit firmer ground because we did the groggies, didn't we, for 1984?
Yeah.
But we'll zoom ahead to 40 years in the time machine and bring us up to date to this year.
2024.
Looking back on this year. And you had some grand plans, Mr. Blythe.
Did I have some grand plans?
You did, yeah. You set out at the beginning of this year.
Oh, no, you're going to remind me of things I've said in the past. People keep doing this. I don't like it. People keep reminding me of things I've said. I'm going to stop saying things. I can't be reminded of anything.
It's the curse of the podcaster, isn't it?
It's the curse. I don't mean the podcast. It's the curse of life. I've said something and people remind me. I remember you said this. Stop remembering things I've said.
Sometimes you just say them, don't you?
Just say things. You might just say something in the hope, but no one will remember. But apparently they do. But anyway, cool.
And
What were my grand plans?
Okay, let me look at my little book. You said
Okay.
in January
I feel like I'm in court.
2024,
God, did I? Right.
you said that you would run more Savage Worlds one-shots around the table. How many have you done?
Prove it. Did I say it in the podcast?
You did.
Oh, you can prove it.
Yeah.
None.
None.
None. None. None.
None.
I've not run any Savage Worlds one-shots, have I?
No. And we were complaining last year when we were doing this that, it's been on a bit of a Savage Worlds drought.
Yes.
And it's continued this year a bit, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
it has, yeah. I think the problem with this thing is, it's like anything, isn't it? When you get to one-shots, convention games and things like that, I don't know, it's always difficult to make a decision about what to run, isn't it? Because you sometimes have an idea that, I'd like to run more of that. But when it comes to the crunch, you always think, but what would I do with it? You know?
Yeah.
I think this is a bit of a problem with Savage Worlds, though, because I've got the Savage Worlds fantasy book. It's quite like, I've got the horror one, got the superheroes one. There's not much out there for them. You know, they do these plot point campaigns, don't they? Pinnacle. And they're all right. They're good, but they're not really suitable for one-shots, are they? I do have a memory of earlier in the year looking at fantasy stuff to virtual grog me, thinking, I might run some fantasy. We've never really run the fantasy version of it, have we? I could have written my own thing, but I was looking for something to base an idea on, something to run. It's hard to find anything. They do lots of campaigns. Deadlands is the same. They do lots of campaigns, but there's not many one-shot scenarios. They do those page scenarios, don't they? But those are the things you look at and think, it's not going to fill 3 hours, this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You're caught between two stools of, this is a bit thin. This might be an hour and a half, not long enough. Or it's a plot point campaign.
The only Savage Worlds that I ran this year was that Battle Beyond the Planets.
Oh, yeah.
One of scenario. One of them, never going to do it again.
Yeah.
Got it out of my system. That was quite fun. And Savage Worlds did that quite well, even though I didn't have the science fiction supplement.
Yeah.
I just used the
good game. It's a good game. It's one of my favourite games, isn't it?
Yeah.
Certainly one of my favourite systems. So I know it kind of divides people a bit, but I think it's a really good system. Sometimes it's hard to know what to do with it.
One of the better games masters that we've experienced playing Savage Worlds because of his tactical nous is Mark. And we had the tail end of the Rippers campaign that we completed. We've had a break, haven't we? And we're going to come back to it. I think this is what this year has told us is, and we'll perhaps go on to talk about how Traveller has done this, the excitement of mechanical elements in a game and how that can create tension and excitement. Because you remember that epic battle in the deserts, Ripper campaign.
Yeah, it's the Mummy. That's something out of the Mummy, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was out of the Mummy, really, but it was. It was a good. It was a great fight. Lots of incident in it. Yeah,
and where I'd be tempted as ever to hand wave things, Mark just went steadfastly through the tactical rules, and there was a cast of thousands, wasn't there, in that battle? It came down really, didn't it, to one of the minions.
Yeah, it was. It was the minion, wasn't it? The woman who was the archaeologist minion, who was kind of relatively insignificant, became quite important in that she managed to get a lucky shot or something and finish off the mummy, King of the Mummies or something like that. Yeah.
Because it was one of those situations where, a bit like the end of a football game where everything was at stake, so we pushed everything forward, even the archaeologist minion played by Caroline Munro.
And we had a similar experience, didn't we, later in the year with Traveller?
Yeah.
Where we were playing Pirates of Drinax and there was a spaceship battle. That was a very tense battle, driven by the mechanics, the cold, hard mechanics of the game, the dice rolling, the rules, drove the tension because you were aware that there was no way of narrating your way out of the trouble you were in. I was kind of stuck with me, that thought, because I think I've run lots and lots of systems. And what I've realised is I don't think as a GM, and maybe not as a player, those kind of narrative story game systems, they're not really for me. I prefer a game that has game-type mechanics, and I like that to drive the story.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago, I got into Fate. I never found it satisfactory because it always felt a bit hand-wavy and vague at times, those story elements. Or you've been injured, or well, let's come up with some kind of injury. Well, no, let's not. Let's roll on a table and it'll tell you where you've been injured. And that will make it more tense and more exciting.
I don't know whether I completely agree with that. I think there's something to be said for both, because even like Savage has a bit of meta currency, doesn't it? So you've got the bennies where you can alter things. And even in that game of Traveller, tense as it was, and it all depended on the dice rolls, we were using luck to sway things in our favor.
You have, but they are, that's true. But they still feel like tactical game-based decisions, whereas some role-playing games have really looser, more narrative things in it. I think you had an experience that you were complaining about recently. I can't remember which game it was, but it was one of these games where you've got some kind of background, career background on your character sheet. And you said, oh, he's all right, this, but everyone just says, oh, but surely my career as a bartender would help me negotiate with the CIA operatives who were guarding the building, because a bartender's good at talking to people. Yeah. And it's like, no, rubbish. That's what I mean. That kind of thing. There was a time when I was quite enamored with that kind of thing. I'm less enamored with it now because it feels like what I'd rather say is, what's your persuade skill? Let's roll your persuade skill. Let's not say that because you were a bartender, you've got some kind of weird charm, where you can.
It's a balance of both.
Kind of thing goes.
Balance of both, because I think to make the actual thing around the table interesting, so in that bartender case, I think somebody has to put forward, right, what are the tactics that you're using? What are the, just saying hanging on a roll.
But I find it, and it's just a kind of thing that's occurred to me this year. A lot of the games I like, and if you ask me to do top 5 games, a lot of the games in that, they're more driven by the dice rolls and where the dice rolls might take you within that story, rather than where everyone agrees to go in that story, if that makes sense, where that's been the case.
Yeah. I mean, that was a dramatic moment when everything was hinging on one dice roll, whether we were going to change the fate of the campaign we were in on one dice roll, and it just didn't go in our favour. But we narrowly missed it by a few points. Yeah. And that was very exciting. But I think there's a place for that, and there's also a place for talking. And
I'm not saying people shouldn't play those games. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I've realised perhaps they're less for me than I thought they were.
Yeah. Well, we're not even started yet. And you said if you were asking me to name your top 5, I'm glad you're in that kind of frame of mind, because it's the award season. That's what we're doing.
They've got the golden envelopes ready.
The spurious golden envelopes are being packed. We're ready to distribute the
apparently
awards.
Golden envelopes.
Yeah, they're right here.
E.D. Mild.
But before we do that, I've got a prefab spread game for you.
Okay, go on.
I'm going on holiday in a few days.
Yeah, right. Where are you going?
You know where I'm going?
I know where you're going. I'm just for people listening. This is the artifice of this podcast. Next, you'll be suggesting you've really got golden envelopes. Where are you going, Dirt Dice, on your holiday? For the benefit of people listening who don't see you every bloody day like I do.
To Sweden. I'm going to Stockholm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stockholm. Stockholm. I
thought I would do a Swedish role-playing games prefab sprout.
Go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you 2 options here.
All right.
Okay. One of them is a significant element of Swedish role-playing. And the other one is a place that I'm going visiting.
Right.
There's only 3 of them, so don't worry. It's not a particular time. I've got these from Outside the Box. How Sweden Conquered the World of Role-Playing Games by Magnus Setter.
All right.
I was given a review copy. I'm going to review it early in the new year. So
can I just say, though, as well, why do we find ourselves in a position where almost everything we do on this podcast, we kind of struggle pronouncing the things we're talking about? Call of Cthulhu, you can never pronounce any of it. But here we go again.
Yeah, we're playing to our strengths here.
For strengths of you're gonna. But go on. I mean,
Well, I think it's a bit of a challenge. We do have Swedish listeners, so it'll be a challenge for them.
yeah.
For them to understand what I'm saying in a Bolton
So
accent
what? Yeah, it'd be harder for them to understand.
as I mangle their
To
language.
mangle their language.
Okay,
All right, go on.
here we
Go
go. Photograph Iska. Or,
Photograph Iska.
yeah.
Yep.
Or Draka Uch Dimana. Which one of those is a role-playing item?
The second one, I think.
Draka Uch Dimana?
I think that's Dragonbane. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the
There you
source
go.
of Dragonbane, yeah. Basic role-playing inspired game.
And what's the other one? The other one's a place, is it?
It's a photography museum.
Oh, right. Okay.
There you
Yeah.
go.
All right. That was quite easy, but
Yeah.
I'm going to get hard on it.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Syncadus.
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 Syncadus. Right,
Yeah.
Okay.
Or Ostermals Soluhol.
I have no idea. I'm going to say Syncadus.
Syncadus, yeah. Syncadus was a magazine and a bit inspired by different worlds. Ostermals Soluhol is the historical food market. See, you learn.
Could it be 3 out of 3?
Yeah.
Could it be a hat trick? This will be a first with a 3-pub scrape.
Are you ready?
I feel a lot of pressure now
You're gonna
to get this right.
You're gonna get a golden gavel. Are you ready?
Hat trick. Go on.
3 in a row.
All right.
Okay.
Go on.
Savavel Winter
Savavel Winter.
or Waldersmarstud.
I'm going to go for Savavel Winter.
Well done, Savavel Winter is a campaign for Draka Undimana.
Oh, there we go.
Hat trick. And
Hat trick. The Golden Gavel.
the other one's a gallery that
The
would
Golden Gavel is a bit like the Golden Envelope.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give it to you now. I'll award it at the end. Ignore this. It's a rug covering a hole. 2024, looking back, how's it been for you?
Well, from a gaming perspective,
It's been weird.
we said every year, it's been a funny old year.
It's been a funny old year. It has been a funny old year because some of the things that cause the patterns and the routines in our normal year have not been there, have they? Because we decided not to go to Expo.
We didn't go to Expo, and I think we both agree that was possibly a bit of a mistake.
I don't think you could have gone anywhere, could you? Around
Well,
that time?
no, because of the elections. Yeah, that's true. It would have that when we did say that, didn't we? We decided not to go, and we didn't expect a 4th of July general election.
No.
But of course, it would have probably scuppered it.
Because I should say that you're an electoral administrator, and so you've had to do 2
I've had
elections.
2 elections.
Well, 3 elections this year, haven't you?
Well, yeah, the 2 elections. Two elections on the same day, and then a general election.
Yeah, so it's been busy, hasn't it?
It has.
And that impacted us.
Does a bit.
And Grog Meet, of course, we didn't have that.
Grog
November.
Meet's been moved, doesn't it? Yeah,
We're doing that in a few
Yeah, you're
weeks.
right. The kind of rhythms of the year have been, disrupted slightly. You were saying earlier, some of the gaming rhythms of the year have been different. Like Savage Worlds stopped. We've not played much Call of Cthulhu this year, have we?
No, we did right at the beginning.
I ran something for you and Eddie right at the beginning of the year, and that's odd because we've commented before, haven't we? We've always been playing some Cthulhu. So there's 2 games there that have kind of, and I don't think they've drifted off the radar because we're fed up of them. I think it's just a kind of almost accidental thing, isn't it? I think we'll go back to both of them. It's not like we've fallen out with them.
I think we used to thrill actually at these Groggy Awards by the number of systems that we played during the year. Just amazed that, at one time we would only be playing a handful and now we were playing like 30 different systems. I think this year it settled down. When I've gone back over it, it's more like 10 different systems that we play.
It has settled down. And again, another thought that I've had this year, the system mastery thing is an increasingly important factor when I'm running something. I'm not saying I'm a master of these systems. That sounds slightly arrogant, isn't it? But what I've realised is knowing a system makes it a lot easier, more a relaxed experience.
Well, one of our New Year's resolutions was going back to basics for that reason, like just going back to some of those games that we enjoyed and connected with. So a lot of Traveller, a lot of big.
This year, really, I've run. The only new game that I've run, and I'll talk about this later, is the Doctor Who role-playing game, which I got this year. And that actually is that's the only new system that I've got this year.
Start of the year, I declared that I wasn't going to touch big book campaigns. And that's held true apart from over recent weeks, but perhaps come on to that, where we started looking at the Borellus Connection, which is for Follow Delta Green. That book campaigned our Monday group, another element of our routine.
Yeah, it has, isn't it? Yeah. A bit more difficult for you, didn't it? Mondays just became a bit of a difficult.
Yeah. And in talking about difficulties, I've gone through the calendar, looking over the past year, and it's the first time that I've seen the words cancelled next to game sessions compared with previous years.
Yeah.
Or postponed. Real life has been disrupted.
Real life. There's a constant tussle, isn't there, between real life and gaming. That's always been the case. And some years I think real life wins a bit and sometimes gaming wins a bit.
I think it's fair to say that this year real life has been heavy on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
But that put aside, it was a rich and varied.
It always is, isn't it? Like we said, we're playing more than we've ever played, really. So we can't, I don't really complain, does it? And this has been a funny year. Like you said, the biorhythms of the year have been slightly different.
Okay, let's get into the awards. And the first envelope I've got is the Messianic Megalomaniac Games Master Award. Now,
have you won it again?
Annually, we have this discussion. What does it mean?
What does it mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah. We're going to have that again, are we? Because I'm never quite sure what it means. Is it a way of you getting an award? If you need an award, I don't mind. You can have that.
What I observed last time, if you remember, is that these awards things that we normally do, we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
Like 40 odd years.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to this, it always has like a bit of an element of hostility.
Well, I think it's because you called it the Megalomaniac Messianic. If you'd said GM of the Year, we could say, oh, it's such and such. But because you've titled it that, that's suggested that they're a messianic megalomaniac. There's only you happy with that title.
Well, let's agree to drop it. Because last year, if you remember, we said to take the hostility out of it, the adversarial nature of it, that it would be your favourite GM experience of the year and my favourite GM. Yeah. And we don't have to decide which is the best. Okay. They can both be equally as good as each other.
Is this like one of those school sports days that the Daily Mail bangs on about that aren't true? Walk Karate podcasters give everyone a prize.
Here we go.
So our best GM experience. My bet, right?
You go.
You can start.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go, and I've been banging on about this, and I do worry that me banging on about it more than others indicates that I probably have enjoyed this more than the players. And that
doesn't matter. That's all right.
Do you think that's all right?
Yeah, probably.
And that is reviving the Racklash campaign. And I'm going to continue that through next year because I've really enjoyed it. Because I think it's because the way that I've done it for Virtual Grog Meet, there were some prequels, sort of like some one-shot little stories that people participated in. And those were the foundations for the campaign that you did. And Mark was part of a couple of those. So he had a bit of prior knowledge before the start.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that, it kind of overlaps a bit and one shots here and there are kind of interconnected.
Yeah. But I get the view of that. So for Grog Meet, I've got a couple of scenarios.
It is very much a megalomaniac.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a couple of one shots, and I think Mark's playing in one of those. So his character, because at the end of the campaign period, there was a point where the king had been revived. The city was surrounded by various factions who were ready to take over. A storm demon was approaching, and we decided at that point we were going to pause
for cliffhanger, end of season cliffhanger.
However, these little one-shots are going to influence what happens next because, one of them goes out and they're going to assassinate one of the war leaders or not. And they can choose which one they go for. So that might have an impact.
Yeah.
And the other one is the one that Mark's being part of. He's just going intercepting the people approaching with a storm demon to see if he can bring it under control. Again, you have nothing to say about this experience of playing it.
Nothing to say.
You played 10 sessions of it.
I enjoyed it.
I've
enjoyed it. It's very good. And it's good to go back to Racklash, the place that it's kind of good to go back to something that we invented in your bedroom 40 years ago And really it just left half-baked, I suppose. But what you've done kind of made it more alive as a place in ways that, you know, some of it's familiar, but some of it's not. Because obviously things have been invented and added on to it.
I think it's the epitome of a messianic megalomaniac in that.
Epitome of it, yeah.
But it leaves you speechless.
It leaves the players speechless. Well, you can't shut up about it. I think what is interesting about the Racklash thing, though, is I think at one point you were, I think it might have been when you were preparing the very first one-shots before we were playing it on Wednesday night. And you said to me, the problem with this is I can't help thinking it's all daft.
Yes.
And that's because you've made it up.
Yeah.
There is that odd thing with this kind of, it's all daft. But when it's a pre-written scenario or campaign that you're working with, and I don't just mean following a pre-written scenario slavishly, because we all adapt these things, and I quite like getting a pre-written one and adapting it. But because the foundation of it is written by someone else, there's always that sense of like, well, if people think it's daft, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Whereas if you make it all up, and I've done the same, I've done scenarios and things at conventions that I have made it all up. And it seems to have gone down well, and it seems fine. But there is an anxiety as a GM where you think, but I've just made this up.
Yeah.
And it's stupid. Because you could argue Greg Stafford just made up Glantha, didn't he? It's all made up. For some reason, if you've made it up, you feel quite vulnerable, I think.
Yeah.
There's a vulnerability that there's no excuses if this falls flat. It's all on me. Because it's a bit like when we did the Conan thing.
Yeah.
Was it The Shadow of the Sorcerer?
Yeah.
And you ended up thinking, I don't really like this campaign. It's a bit flawed and there's bits in it that are a bit stupid. But that wasn't your fault, was it?
Yeah.
But if you create something yourself, it's, oh, well, it's my fault.
And maybe it was that Shadow of the Sorcerer campaign for Conan that persuaded me at long last just to write my own campaign, because I think that's what we set out at the start of the year. Yeah. That I have not actually, the reason why I'm so thrilled to be running Racklash. It's good to have Eddie back playing as well. That's another good element of it. But also, I don't know how it's going to end. Whereas you get those big book campaigns, it's all predetermined. Yeah. I don't know which way this is going to go.
That's true. That is one of the problems. And that is, as we've said a few times about me running Pirates of Drinax, that's what's good about Pirates of Drinax, is that I don't know how it's going to end. Whereas some of these big campaigns, they are going in one direction.
Yeah.
And that's where you're going to end up. And that's when you get a bit, as a GM, you get a bit tired of them, can't you?
Yeah. And that other aspect of that Conan campaign was loads of exposition. Loads of a cast of thousands.
Yeah.
I can create a cast of thousands. I know who they all are because I'm making them all.
Making them up. Yeah.
And when I'm giving exposition, I'm only giving the exposition that I've managed to make up on the hoof.
Yeah. I suppose it's a thing, like you say, it's a thing of there's campaigns and campaigns. So there are some campaigns like your Racklash thing where anything could happen and then you have to react to it as a GM.
Yeah.
So this will happen and then you'll have to go away and think, right, well, that's happened. What am I going to do about that?
Yeah.
As opposed to it being a programmed set series of events that are leading to a particular climax.
Yeah.
Almost like it doesn't really matter what you do. You're going to have to face down this baddie at the end, and that's that, because that's what keeps it fresh. But again, it is a strange thing, I think, that when you're making stuff up, you can feel quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
Particularly like fantasy, because again, it's one thing to sort of make something up and go, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to set this in the real world. It's called Cthulhu and it's going to be set, I don't know, in the Houses of Parliament during the Thatcher government or something like that. You're still basing it on something real. But with fantasy, there is that thing of, I'm not really basing it on anything.
Yeah.
It's just made up.
Because it's a bit of, as well as doing the scenarios, you're also doing that secondary world building, aren't you? And what you're trying to avoid, you're using cliche, but you're trying to avoid it just appearing like another version of something else that you could
You're trying to mask you need the cliches because that's what makes it familiar for players and manageable for everyone around the table. But at the same time, you're trying to just veil the cliches or twist them or turn them a little bit so they're not quite as cliche as they may seem. It's kind of fine balancing act, isn't it? Of, this is familiar, but I want it to be unfamiliar as well and a bit different. So it's quite difficult to do.
So the Games Master in the Racklash campaign is what I'm giving the award to. What about you?
I suppose my big GMing experience this year is again Pirates of Drenax, isn't it? Because I was GMing it at the beginning of the year, then we had a summer break and I'm GMing it again.
It is and I think you should rightly claim that as your GM award. Because
I suppose
it's pushed you into different directions.
Yeah, it has.
Particularly like over recent months, recent sessions, because it has got a bit more abstracted and a bit more larger scale. Yeah. I feel like in this last season, it's taken a different tone and a different level.
Well, there is a different, and we're playing it tomorrow morning, aren't we? And you will find there is a different tone to it. It does kind of change a bit in terms of the way the game works and the way the dice kind of roll. It's a much bigger thing in terms of what you're then trying to do when you're trying to form an empire. You know, going around planets, kind of recruiting people and doing some piracy is quite granular. What happens when you have a fleet where you have a massive naval battle, which you might need, no spoilers, but you might need to do that at some point.
Yeah.
It has some different rules, which are a bit more abstracted, because it has to be, because we'd be there all day, wouldn't we, if you had 30 ships on either side. We'd never finish it, would we?
Yeah.
So there are some mini games within it to form the empire and do certain things slightly outside of them.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I suppose it is my favourite thing that I've GM'd this year, because it's so it's kind of so present, isn't it? For me as a GM, everything else is one shots. I mean, I'm running a bit of DCC Landmark for our Wednesday group now, but that's only just started, so that probably doesn't quite qualify, does it?
No, and I think it has a similar effect on you as the Racklash has on me, in that it's giving you a few knots to untangle. And
I can see I can see that. That is the thing, isn't it, as a GM, with both your Racklash thing and my Pirates of Drenax. It gives you things that after the session you have to go away and think about and think, right, they've done that. I didn't expect them to do that, but they can do that because it's kind of open-ended. It's sandbox. They can do that. They've done that. How does the world react to what they've just done?
Yes.
What's going to happen if they do this and if they do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it always surprises me that as players, you do things that I'm not expecting you to do.
Yeah.
You have different attitudes about certain things. I suppose that has to win it. Another good experience, though, was I ran some Call of Cthulhu for you and Eddie, the Cults of Cthulhu book, that Angel's Thirst.
Yeah.
And it was a good scenario. I enjoyed running it.
It's got some mixed reviews, that scenario, but I think it was a strong one. I felt it was very atmospheric. And
I thought it was very well put together, because as an investigation, it does give you lots and lots of options in how to investigate it. And as a GM, it gives you all the characters, and there's a sense in which, like some investigations sometimes feel a bit linear.
Yeah.
So you do get some investigative scenarios that all hinge on, you go here, you must find that clue, that'll take you there. You must find that clue, that'll take you there. And then you find this clue, and that leads to the confrontation. They do feel quite linear, but that Angel's Thirst is not really like that. It's obviously taking you to a certain confrontation, but you can do it in different ways, can't you? I think that's what's quite good about it.
And it'll depend upon your obsessions as well. So you can hook onto an element of it that you find fascinating as a player and want to kind of dig into more.
Yeah.
And it'll yield a bit more as well. Because we got a bit obsessed about the architecture of the place that we were examining, and we went probably further into that.
So you can investigate like the architecture, and the architect is one thing. There's there's mobsters involved in it at some point. You can go into that, or maybe not go into that. And then there's this weird church, and you can investigate. So you've got a few options, which I think is quite good. There's a lot of work been put into it, that if it was something I was writing, it'd be a lot of work to write about things that may not come to fruition.
Yeah.
And that is that's sometimes a good thing about a pre-written scenario, that they've put the work in to give you all these options. some of which inevitably will not be investigated.
Yeah.
But I've not had to do that work.
You don't do accents
I don't do accents.
and melodrama, but I felt that the NPCs were very distinct just by the way, obviously, they've given you clues on what the attitude is different.
Yeah.
So that was...
Yeah, it's a really good scenario, really good kind of interesting scenario with a lot going on and a bit of the mystery as well. I think the mystery was good in that you didn't know what was going on. I don't know, it's like, it's a mystery. Of course you don't know what's going on. But sometimes, again, in investigative scenarios, sometimes it's a bit obvious where to go. It's a bit obvious what's going on and it's obvious where to go. But in that, it's not particularly obvious.
Yeah.
At first, what's going on? You're not quite sure, are you?
No.
You know, you brought into it in quite an innocuous way. Some taxi driver's gone missing, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And of course, that's your way in, but that's not really what's going on.
And there's also where some of those might have like one little twist that'll send you in another different direction. There's quite a few little...
Yes, that's what I mean. There's a few little elements to it that can send you in different directions. And they're all quite well written and quite well fleshed out. So that, you know, you might go to some garage there's like this industrial estate. You go to a garage. Those NPCs are fleshed out quite well in terms of what they know, what they think of you, or they might think of the mob. But then you don't have to go there, do you?
No.
And if you don't, it doesn't really matter.
No.
You will eventually get where you need to be.
At the end of last year, I think I said that Cults of Cthulhu was one of the best, Cthulhu supplements, one of the best supplements that come out. And I still think that that's the case.
Yeah.
I think it's a really strong supplement that's overlooked a bit.
Yeah, I would agree. Because as well, the book itself gives you a kind of like it's a deep dive into the Cult of Cthulhu.
Yeah.
So, you kind of understand that cult more than...
So you've got two GM experiences there for Contender. Are you landing on one or are you just...
I'll land on, well, I don't know.
You can have two.
No. The Daily Mail will be outraged. You can't give us both an award and then give me two. You're mad. It'll be lollipops for everybody next. Stop it. I don't want to be dragged through the tabloid press for giving awards to everyone. No, I'll go for Pirates of Drenet.
Pirates of Drenet. Well deserved. Yeah. We're just patting ourselves on the back. It hardly seems to matter. Right, here goes. Next is the Olive Kenigsberg Players and People Who Play Award. Right.
Another
Okay.
confusing award.
Confusing. So all you have to say is what's the best game you played in? And what's your favourite character?
All right.
Then we landed on that last
Well, I'm going to say my favourite game of the year that I've played in. And I've played in lots of good games. Again, that's a great thing about the moment. I think a lot of the games I've played have been very enjoyable. And again, we can't pronounce it. It's Helvetia.
Helvetia.
I've really enjoyed Helvetia.
We've been criticised, actually. I'm just going to pick up on this.
We've been criticised?
Yeah, yeah.
No. By who?
So somebody said that we called it Helvetia. Helvetia.
And what is it?
Well, no, they said it was Helvetica, but Helvetica's a
typeface. It's like a font, isn't it?
Yeah. So I'm sticking with Helvetia.
We'll stick with Helvetia.
We
know what we mean.
We'll vary it.
Should we just vary?
Yeah, we'll just vary it. And
just stick to it. Like we have with Massive Narthletet. We pronounce Narthletet wrong, but we're sticking with it. It's 40 years of mispronunciation.
Yeah.
We're sticking with it.
Stick it.
But I know, I really enjoyed Helvetia.
So do we need to explain? I sound like Rory Stewart now. Do you need to explain?
Yes,
what
I will. I will explain.
Is?
So it's a game, and this is what, and I've said this to Chris Sharp, so I know this will not offend him. But when he first suggested it, I thought, really? Is this going to be fun?
Yeah.
It is a game. It's based, the system itself is based around like D&D. It's a D&D type system.
Yeah.
So the system's like, there are some tweaks here and there, different rules about virtue and stuff and the magic. But basically it's a D20 armor class kind of system. Yeah. So that's nothing, I suppose, unusual about that.
Yeah. And the rules hardly seem to matter. Let's just put that to one side.
Right, go on. Well, I think the rules matter if you want them to matter. I think it depends.
Right, but go on.
Anyway,
go on.
Anyway. But it's set in a kind of imaginary, what would you say, 16th century, 17th century Switzerland. So it's set in the cantons of Switzerland, but in an imaginary fantasy version where there is magic and there are miracles and there are some monsters. It has a sort of, I would say it has a kind of Brothers Grimm feel to it. So the world's not awash with monsters. It's just that there are legends about monsters and strange things and magic and witchcraft and that kind of thing. So it's set like a Brothers Grimm, and it describes itself as picaresque. It's a very picaresque idea.
Yeah, I think Brothers Grimm, if Alexander Dumas had written it.
Grimm's Tears, Brothers Grimm.
There's a bit of swashbuckling.
And I suppose as well, and this is maybe why I like it, maybe you like it, there is a kind of Vancian thing to it as well, in that it's not like The Dying Earth. It's not that kind of fantasy world, because that's a very, very different world. But I think the characters that you end up playing and the scrapes that you get into did feel very Vancian. They felt like something Kugel the Clever might get involved in.
And the NPCs that you encounter have all got their motivations. They're quite spiteful, bit cruel.
Yeah, everyone's spiteful, jealous, arrogant, vain people, which I think we ended up playing characters like that, which was quite funny.
Yeah. And I think it's the first time where we use this expression, sandbox. But that campaign is a genuine sandbox, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like a hex crawl, isn't it? Well, I don't think we have played games, campaigns and run campaigns that are sandboxes. Often a sandbox can have a plot, but how you deal with the plot could be anything you want. How Strenax is a sandbox in that you do have a plot, but you can do it anywhere. Whereas with this one, it's a genuine hex crawl where there is no plot. You go from hex to hex and encounter things, and you can engage with those things or ignore them. It's up to you.
Yeah.
And that's what I found quite fascinating.
Yeah,
We've never really, in all the 40 years we've been doing these games, I've never really done that.
And so the characters we were playing, I was playing Ulrich, the German cleric, priest, who had a penchant for drinking.
Yeah.
And your character?
I was playing Antonia, who was a Spanish lady. She was a duelist, Spanish duelist, with a very low virtue. So it has a thing called virtue. If you're my character was a fighter, duelist. It didn't really matter. But if you are a priest, you can do like miracles, can't you? But you have to keep your virtue high. So you have to do things. And this is, I suppose this is the thing about rules, I suppose, isn't it? I'll come back to the rules in that it isn't about just being virtuous and everyone agreeing that you're being virtuous. And if you're what's called student, which is like a black magician or a witch, you have to keep your virtue low, because if you become too virtuous, the devil won't give you the powers that you need. And your virtue's tracked, isn't it? There's points that you lose and gain points. So if you do something, if you're a witch and you do too many good things, your magic won't work because your virtue will go too high. And you as a priest, if your virtue drops, then that impacts on you. So there is a kind of rule system tracking your virtue. And it affects other characters as well, because I think if your virtue drops to 0, I think the devil kind of comes to claim your soul, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So it even matters.
And our companions, because we were a bit of a double act, weren't we, in the when things happened. But our companions, Mark was a soldier.
He was a Swedish soldier, wasn't he? Yeah. And Matthew was a French rogue, wasn't he?
Yeah, footpad.
Gaston, a rogue. Yeah, footpad. Yeah. So we were all kind of quite colourful characters. And I did really enjoy it, because I think at first when we started playing it, we were probably a bit puzzled, because we thought, but what are we supposed to do here? But once you get your head round, let's just engage with this. So we went to like a tavern, didn't we, where these fish people, and again, you didn't know whether they were real or not. And that was a good thing about it. The tavern man kept saying, these fishmen keep coming and wanted to steal this idol from my tavern. And is he bonkers?
We'd encountered people who were deluded.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, we met a guy in a cottage who thought he was a king. and acted like everything. There was a castle. It's
And
like mad.
I think what happened a few sessions in, and you're right, we started to engage with it, is the realisation in the hex crawl that what Chris was doing was just presenting the situation to us.
Yeah.
And I think you and Mark, when I played with you a lot, are naturally cautious players.
Yeah.
So when presented with something, you're trying to tactically work out, right, what's going on here?
I've been tricked.
I've been
Is it a
tricked.
threat or something. Yeah.
However, what it needs is you need to provoke it a bit, don't you?
Yes, to poke it over with a stick.
Yeah.
And that was like, the tavern guy, he was like, well, he's talking to these fish people. And we thought, well, I'll tell you what, let's try and sort this all out for him.
Yeah.
Let's sort this all out for him. And it was kind of a great adventure where, I mean, it's maybe spoilers this, isn't it? But the fishermen gave him some scales that turned into silver. But of course, we stole the scales. And when you get into daylight, they turn back into scales and not coins anymore. It's kind of quite a picaresque ending that we were quite roguish and thought we were stealing money. But in the end, we weren't. And it did lead to make the greatest NPC portrayal of the year.
Yeah.
Chris Sharp's Fishman.
Yeah, we don't have an award for this, but I think we'll give a special award for Fishman of the Year.
Fishman of the Year. When I said, what does the Fishman say? And he just says, oh, right, okay. I can't speak to these fishmen. Never mind. Yeah. NPC of the Year. Fishman. Hell, let's see a Fishman.
Well, I think the Olive Kingsburg Players and People Who Play award goes to Helvetia for Antonia and for Ulrich.
They were double act, weren't they? They were double act, It was quite good. Drunken Priest. And a slightly selfish woman who was quite... It was a very, very entertaining game. And I think as well, it warrants the award as well. Because of all the games we've played, it's the one that surprised me the most.
Yeah.
Because when it was suggested, I'd never heard of it. But I do think it's a very kind of colourful and creative game and lots of stuff in it that you can.
And an example of one of those games as well that you come away from and you think, you're experiencing it in the moment. It only exists in that moment, but you come away and then you remember all the things that happened.
Yeah.
And it is like a story. You could write it down.
Yes. And we think we said that, didn't we? After we thought you could write this session down and it would be a story. It would be a good story. That's what it reminded me of, like Jack Vance. It would almost be like a picaresque Vancian tale of
where we're swapping letters and forging letters.
That's right. Yeah, we got a letter, didn't we, that several people were after, and it ended up being this farce almost of forging a letter. And your priest making a bad forge.
Because I was drunk.
3 versions.
I was drunk.
Yeah, 3 versions of it, and different people who wanted it, trying to pass it off to different people.
They're trying to convince a woman that the letter had appeared in a fish.
That's a miracle. It's appeared in a fish.
Oh, great stuff.
Yeah, but no, really, really good game and very, very enjoyable. And like I say, you're kind of surprised me. That's a good thing, isn't it? We play a lot of games and sometimes it's good to play something that just takes you by surprise in a good way, I think.
Oh no, they sat in our chairs. New kid on the top, the tabletop. Okay, so this is the game that new to us. New
to us,
new game.
New to us. Yeah.
New to us.
Go on. Do you want to start with that?
Well, there's been very few games actually that I played for the first time this year. There's one exception that I'm going to put forward, but I don't really want to talk a lot about it because I think it's going to be the part of a future episode.
Yeah.
Coming soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I played quite a bit of West End games, Star Wars.
We did play that, didn't we? I played it with Eddie and you and Eddie. You ran the Manhunt. Was it the Manhunt one?
Yeah, it's Manhunt, which I've run a couple of times now. Yeah. And it's worked out again, it's one of those scenarios that's worked out differently each time. It is really a scenario that you're meant to play over a series of sessions, but I did one of my compressions to put it into a one shot. neat little system.
It is a good system, yeah.
D6 system,
Yeah.
which you can have a lot. It just, coming back to that thing of rules, it's very light on its feet in terms of rules, but it replicates that fast and loose feeling of Star Wars and the Star Wars universe.
I think you're right. What's good about it is it's got quite a light rule set, but there are enough rules and enough things in it to make it feel like Star Wars.
Yeah.
And hold it together as a game of Star Wars rather than, like, they're not overdone it on the rules. And sometimes games, when people are designing something around a specific film or particular idea, they'll put lots of extra rules in that make it seem like that setting.
Yeah.
But they don't do that, but it still manages to hang together as Star Wars, I think. Quite an achievement, really.
Yeah, quite sophisticated in how it can scale as well. So, you can do it for armed combat. So combat rules, for example, work on face-to-face combat, but you can use them for ship-to-ship combat. It's the same principles that you're applying. And I think that's quite clever. So, yeah, I think the new kid on the tabletop is West End Games Star Wars, which I want to play some more of this year.
Yeah.
Go in 2025.
25, yeah.
What about you?
I think mine is clear cut winner, I suppose, because like you, I've not really encountered and certainly not bought any new systems this year, apart from Doctor Who, the Doctor Who role-playing game.
Yeah.
The second edition.
Is that a story-based game by any chance?
I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it is. It has things called story points, but to be honest, it is kind of...
I think it's one of those story games.
I think it is.
I think if we did
I don't think it is. Maybe I won't. I'll never play it again then.
Go on.
It's, but I think it's called the Vortex system, isn't it?
Yeah.
System.
It does work very well.
It does work well. I suppose I know what you mean, but I suppose they are called story points, but they're a bit like Benny's in Savage Worlds, in that really what you use them for is to adjust rolls. You adjust rolls, so it's not. You can use them to come up with story detail, but generally they use mechanically. I suppose that's the thing about them. But it's quite. I quite like it. It's the second edition, and I always shied away from buying the first edition because I know myself, and I know my bank account, and I know that if I'd have bought the first edition, all those separate books about each Doctor, I'd have bought them all. Yeah, I bought them all. Because we did play it, didn't we? You ran some.
Yeah, and we've done an episode on it.
I quite liked it. But they've done a second edition, which it's very similar. It tweaks the game a bit, but not much. I mean,
it's very much backwards compatible, isn't it?
It is, very much so. But I suppose what's kind of appealing about it is they've condensed all the stuff about the Doctors into 2 volumes. So rather than buying 14 volumes, you've got to just buy 2.
Yeah.
You've got all the background for all the different eras of the Doctor. But I suppose what's interesting is what you said about Star Wars is very true about Doctor Who. It's a very light, easy system, but there's enough in it to make it interesting.
Yeah.
And it does capture Doctor Who. It captures the style of Doctor Who. I mean, I know Doctor Who in style has changed over the years. You look at a Tom Baker one and a Jodie Whittaker one, they're a bit different. But generally, some of those kind of key things give it the feeling of Doctor Who. So you can create time agents or unit soldiers. There's all sorts of options. But if you run a traditional Doctor Who story where there is one of the Doctors, or you create your own Time Lord, they're a lot better, but they have very few story points. Whereas the companions are a bit rubbish, but have loads of story points.
Yeah.
And they can augment roles more than the Doctor. So the Doctor, in a way, is slightly more jeopardy than they, I think. And I ran it at Owlbear, and I ran it for you, didn't I?
Yeah.
For our Wednesday group. And I think it's just a really nice, it's a nice system. I like the system.
Yeah. I would still contend. I mean, I'm not being provocative. But we're saying that there's space for different types of games. And you're right, that jeopardy feeling of things hanging on a dice is the experience that Traveller brought. But I do think with this, the Vortex system, I think it is really good. It has a certain flexibility around using story elements that because we came up with a fantastical way of
It does. You're right. It does. But I suppose it still comes back to some roles at the end of the day.
Yeah. But I never, any time when I'm playing that, I never feel at any point where I'm anything particularly high risk.
Yeah.
Because it isn't in Doctor Who, is it? It's like, it's mild jeopardy.
No. But I think what's interesting about it, and I've not really done this because the 2 times I've run it, it's not really come to that. But there is a certain lethality with the weapons. So some of the weapons in it have a thing where they are lethal. So if they hit you and they do a what's called a brilliant success. So they roll 2 dice. One of the dice is a 6 and they do it. It's lethal. So you're dead. You are dead.
Yeah.
And the story points can be used to adjust that roll. So if you run out of story points and the Dalek hits you, you are dead. So there is a lethality in it. But I know what you mean. As long as you've got the story points, you can avoid that, as in Doctor Who, you can. And another kind of good thing about it is how quite very simple mechanism of combat order gives it the feel of Doctor Who. And that what happens in combat is you talk. If you want to talk, you can talk. If you want to run, you can run. And then it's fighting at the end. So if you're confronted by some Daleks, you can try and talk to them and fool them before they shoot you. They can't shoot you until you've either tried to fool them or run away. And that is very Doctor Who, isn't it? That's incredibly Doctor Who, isn't it? The Daleks never kind of fire first. They always talk to him, don't they? He offers him a jelly baby or something. You know, and it's a very simple thing, but it captures the flavour of those stories very, very well.
Yeah.
But
no, I enjoyed playing it. It'd be good to play that more. I think we've got in the locker some actual play that we recorded of the Autons. I've never put it out.
Yeah, we did, didn't we, with the original game? Yeah, the original game's good. Like I say, it's not hugely different.
No.
There's a bit of controversy. People who like the first edition don't like the second one. But I think the only controversial thing for me is that I have now got a rule book with a picture of Bradley Walsh on the front cover.
Was it ever those edition words? Right. Next one. Random roll on an encounter table.
Okay.
So this is where we talk about stuff that we've done, events that we've attended. And it's been not been a lot of it this year.
There's not, because I suppose, like we say, Grog, the biorhythms, isn't it? Expo, Owlbear, Grogmeet. But we've been to Owlbear.
Owlbear the Wizard Staff, that's the one that's in Leamington Spa.
Yeah. Been to that. And we've been to some MorpCons in Manchester, which is like a local gaming thing.
Fairly regular.
Yeah.
And my nomination is I had a trip to that there Fancy London.
Oh, you did, didn't you?
I did. And I went to an event that was being held in a gallery. And it was a symposium about role-playing games, world building. It was all very, erudite and interesting. It was like the setting. I've wrote about it on the blog, so if you're interested, you can read about it there. But it was like in the setting of, do you remember those youth programs in the 1980s?
Why don't you?
Yeah, like a concrete, it's something that'd be on Channel 4 with
You mean like the youth programme on the Young Ones presented?
Ben
Elton.
Ben Elton,
yeah. That kind of youth programme.
Yeah. It's that scaffolding and bits of concrete here and there. And
are they not finished yet?
It doesn't look like it's finished. One of the people that was there but wasn't there, but was beaming in from the swamps of New Jersey.
Yeah.
Stu Horvath. We need to get him on because he does a vintage RPG podcast.
Yeah.
And he's had a book out this year. And he was there and he's been interviewed. And he gave a bit of wisdom that I've written down. I've got it held and I've thought about it all year. And that is, RPGs defy analysis.
Yes. It's a good point, that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very good point. And you can see how most of the controversies around RPGs, how you play them, which are the best games, etc., are because of that.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to analyse it. You've got people doing actual plays that you can watch and go, oh, that's one way of doing it. But a lot of RPGs, they're just played by people online, like us, Roll20, every other Wednesday. We do our thing with people who like, that's what we do. We do it our way. There's no way you can really say it's right or wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, in a way, that's a sort of interesting thing, isn't it? In the modern world where you hear things about professional GMs. I saw something online. I think it was like a pub. Can't remember what it was called now. It was a pub or a bar, right? But it ran D&D. It said, oh, you come to this pub and we'll show you how to play D&D. It seemed to be like latching on to the idea that D&D was becoming more and more popular and therefore people want to play it. So you come to our pub and we'll run a game. We have professional GMs who will show you how to do it. It's like, I'll show you how to do it. I get it to a point because you have to show people what to do. This is a D20. This roll this, get more than that. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, of course. But at the same time, like I say, it puts me back up a bit for that reason, I think. And it always has a bit. And until you quoted that at me, I didn't know why. And I think now I know why.
Yeah.
I think it is because it's people trying to bracket it and define it as, this is how you do it. Yeah. Don't do it like that. Do it like this. Yeah. We're professionals. Pay me money to run a game because I know what I'm doing. You don't know what you're doing. You're around your kitchen table doing this game. You don't know what you're doing. I know what I'm doing. And that's the kind of thing, I'm not sure you do because it defies analysis. People do all sorts of things with it, don't they?
Yeah. All kinds of solo games, story games, tactical games, all different approaches.
Yeah. And people want different things from it. So you could take exactly the same game. People will play it in totally different ways. Even something like 5th edition D&D, you could take that, the most popular game, etc., etc. There are people who will play it as a dungeon crawl. There's people who play it wandering around Waterdeep, ordering the breakfast and buying a fancy hat and hardly rolling the dice. Then there's other people who play it as if it's about some geopolitical campaign, about people trying to control different parts of the world and all that kind of thing. They're all playing the same game in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's actually fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And that's the thing. He's right. It defies analysis.
Yeah.
That's what frustrates people about it.
It frustrates people about it. I suppose it's what keeps people in podcasts, isn't it?
It is what keeps people in podcasts, trying to define it. Yeah. But it also means that's why when you go to a convention, we've had this experience. You go to a convention and you find yourself playing a game at a convention and thinking, what's going on here? I'll do it like this.
Yeah.
But that's just me not quite enjoying that style. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It isn't, it's just a device to explore something in the way that you want to explore it.
Yeah, so that was, it was a good day. It was good just to have a trip down to London, went into it and then came away and came home. It's really well organised. It was called Planar Effect Gaming Imaginaries. It was by David Blandy and Jamie Sutcliffe, so that was really, really good. But it did give me an idea. I don't know that I've got enough on, but it'd be good to organise a symposium up here, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Have a proper chat.
Yeah, proper chat about the thing that can't be defined.
Yeah.
Try and define the thing that can't be defined. There we go. It's a symposium with you walk in, there's a sign, don't worry, it can't be defined. Go to the pub.
So that gets the award this time.
Well, that's my random encounter.
What's your random encounter?
My random encounter, it's not that random because it's Paul Fricker. We know Paul, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's not really random, but it is random because there's a random question thrown at me over the table in the curry place at Elba. So on the Friday night, everyone goes for a curry, and I was sat opposite Paul Fricker.
And was the conversation about the menu in the Indian?
There was a conversation about the menu. It was a confusing menu. Yeah,
it is a bit like one of those role-playing supplements that tells you everything about the world in which these curries come from.
Yeah.
The history of the curries for 700 years.
Yeah.
For
700 years, this curry has been made traditionally in Southeast Asia. Oh, you think, what is it? What am I actually going to be getting here? Yeah, I think me and Paul were eating a green thing with potatoes in it, like green stuff with potatoes. But anyway, it was quite nice, but it weren't no jalfrezi, put it that way. Anyway, but that's beside the point. But after that, after we'd all got over the menu, he presented me with this question. He said, what kind of world, what kind of world, fantasy world is the world of D&D? And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, when you think about it, people often talk about the world of D&D being like this, like that, like the other. But it's not really like any fantasy world. And yet, everyone understands it.
Yeah.
So and I just can't say anything. Is the world of D&D is like Lord of the Rings? It's not like Lord of the Rings, is it really? It has elements of that, but it's not like Lord of the Rings, is it? Is it like Dying Earth? But no, it's not like Dying Earth. No, it's not really like any one fantasy. It's like an amalgam. So he was talking about like magic potions. He said, people have magic potions. There's no magic potions all over the place in Lord of the Rings. There's not really, is there?
No. Or in many.
In anything, yeah.
Examples.
But it's like Alice in Wonderland. Magic potions, Alice in Wonderland. So it's kind of like brings together all these different components of fantasy and make-believe into this world that is a world in its own right. D&D is its own world. That not just as its own world, but it's a world people understand very quickly.
Yeah, it's like a lingua franca of worlds.
Yes, yeah.
That if you put it in front of somebody, they instantly get where it is. But it's everything and nothing.
It's everything and nothing. Yeah. And he just kind of posed this question. We had a conversation about it. And I thought, again, that's kind of stuck with me. It's kind of a weird thing of, it's everything and it's kind of everything and nothing all at once, isn't it? It's really odd. And it resonates as well because I think in the last podcast I talked about, for Grogmeat, running an old AD&D module called The Secret of Bone Hill. And I'm not doing that now.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I'm not doing it is because when I started working on it, it all felt a bit bland. It's a bit like you say, everything and nothing. The world of D&D's everything and nothing all at once. This kind of strange world where there's some magic potions here, there's a magical this, a magical that. There's something very familiar about it, and you can see why it's a popular game. Because in a way, if you present that to people who've never played a role-playing game, and this is kind of Paul's point, I think, they would cotton onto it very quickly.
As we were saying earlier, it's the problem of presenting a secondary world, isn't it? Where it's not Earth. It's not Earth. It's an imagined Earth. So what do you present to people? With D&D, it's cliched, but it also defies cliche because it's its own thing.
Yes, it's its own thing. Yeah, is it pseudo-medieval? Not really.
Yeah.
No, it's like a mixture of times in a way, ranging from Dark Ages right through to, I think we talked about this in a podcast earlier this year, bordering on 17th century kind of Europe. It's and everything in between all at once.
With a bit of the frontiers of Western America as well.
Yeah, a bit of Wild West in there as well. There's a bit of everything there. Like I said, a bit of Lord of the Rings, bit of Jack Vance, bit of Lankmar, bit of Conan, bit of Alice in Wonderland, bit of all sorts of things that are in there that comprise this world that people do understand quite readily. Whereas you say other settings, maybe people wouldn't quite understand those settings or get, not so much understand them, but I suppose maybe Paul's point is it's very easy to slot into it and operate as a player in that world.
Yeah.
Whereas you might understand the world, the universe of travel, for example. You could explain it to someone, but maybe it's a bit trickier.
Yeah.
If you've never played a role-playing game to fit into that world. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of really interesting conversation because, well, a bit like that. The thing about the defy explanation. When someone says it, you go, yes, I've always thought that, but you never thought it. I've never thought it, but now you've said it. That's what I've been thinking. And it's a bit like Paul's comment. I thought, oh yeah, that's right. That's the thing I've always struggled with a bit. And like this Secret of Bone Hill, I'm now running something in the Midlands using Old School Essentials. That has just a lot more flavour to it, and it's quite a specific setting. Whereas D&D is like, it's everything and nothing all at once.
Are you sure it's my round? This point of the year, we also like to reflect on stuff that we're quite glad to see the back of. So we imagine ourselves on a balloon.
Oh, yeah.
Lifting. And so what have you chucked out of the balloon this year?
I don't know. I had to chuck out of the balloon. You see, normally there's been some kind of bad experience, hasn't there? And I've chucked that, but I don't know. Has it been a really bad experience, game-wise? There's been some bad experience life-wise, but game-wise, are there anything?
Well, let's package those things that have been bad in life and chuck them.
Things have got in the way of gaming.
Yeah.
Chuck them over the side. I think that's possible.
This was the year that I finally cut ties with Twitter. I deleted my Twitter.
Maybe I'd agree with you there, yeah.
And I suppose everybody's doing it now, aren't they? But it was strangely, it was a strange breakup because the Grognard Files started as a Twitter concept. We started on there, myself and Daily Dwarf. We started about the same time, and we started reflecting on gaming from the past, and it became this podcast. I just think it's made me reflect a bit on the whole thing of engaging on social media, which was probably a biggest percentage of the friction in my life, my day-to-day existence, a couple of years ago than it is now. And I feel better for it, that it's not as important as it was.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I mean, you've always engaged with it a bit more than me, but there was a point where I engaged with Twitter. And I think for a few years now, actually, when I was on Twitter, I've drifted away from it. I kind of there, I like things, and it's good for sending messages. Gaming group messaging, direct messaging was quite useful. But I agree with you. I'd certainly for the last 2.5 years before coming off it, I'd stopped really engaging with it in terms of posting things.
But I think you can't ignore the fact that it brought a lot of people together. A lot of people that are now our friends formed through that kind of community that was built up. And you see Blue Sky in many ways has a look and feel of Twitter 8 years ago.
Yeah.
But I feel very little need to replicate that experience of 8 years ago. Quite glad for it to just be a kind of a side element.
Well, I think I once said this before, the thing what I dislike about social media the most, don't you?
What's that?
It's the social aspect of it. Do you know what I like the most about social media?
Is it the social?
It's the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of irony of it, really. It's like the fact that there's all these people, some of you people you just don't know, banging on about stuff. You think, oh, for God's sake, like being at some awful party full of people you don't know. But what are you talking about?
Well,
but equally, of course, if it wasn't for Twitter, none of this kind of would be happening. So the social side of it is also a great thing. It's kind of both.
As an analogy, earlier this week, I went to Co-op Live to see Paul Heaton.
Yes.
The Beautiful South, or The Beautiful South, as it was written on the side. And he did a performance there, and it was full of people. It was packed. Yeah. And I saw a few friends there, some familiar faces, and they came over and said hello. And went there. Then part way through, it all kicked off, and people started punching each other around me, and I had to move out. I thought, that's Twitter, isn't it?
Yes. That's a good analogy, yeah. You meet people you like, but then eventually everyone will start punching each other.
Yeah.
People you don't know will start punching each other, and somehow you'll be caught in the middle of it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, it's a strange thing of the social side of it is great.
We're all here to try and enjoy ourselves, but you've decided
to ruin it by punching each other.
Just punching each other, yeah. Anyway, that's Twitter.
Yeah, maybe we both agree for once that's the thing that's going over the side.
Yeah.
Goodbye, Twitter.
Next up is the Grog Pod of the Year. What would be your choice? It's hard to judge our own work, but
it's hard to judge.
I've been doing it for the last hour, so you haven't listened to the interviews until they go out.
No. I do have a different take on it. You edit it, so you've listened to it endlessly, and I record
endlessly.
Record
endlessly. I might cut out one of those endlessly, but I might leave them on there.
Endlessly.
Is
it endlessly?
Yeah, go on.
Endlessly. So I listened to them once, but I don't know. I always find it difficult to pick a favourite, really, because I suppose although I don't have that. I've not edited them, but I always have you've still got a bit of knowledge behind the scenes about, is it one that you think, oh, this is going to be any good? Oh, but it is quite good. Oh, I struggled with that, but it sounds all right.
From an editorial point of view, we wanted to
again, go back to basics at the start of this year and just going to kind of turn over a bit more nostalgia. Hit a few nostalgia buttons, and that was a deliberate choice this year. And I think we have done it. I do think in the year ahead, it'll be good just to, as we said last time, just explore some games that are not familiar to us, but might be familiar to
Other
others.
people.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to know?
Go on. What are the great groggy public?
Well, this year, as you know, has been a year of elections. So this is I think in the history, more people around the world this year have engaged in the democratic process.
Yeah, that's true.
Than any other time in
I
history.
think the way it's all fallen, I read that somewhere,
Yeah.
Apart from in Bolton, turnout was 46%.
Okay, so this is the vote. So we've got a joint second place.
Okay. Yeah.
Joint second place at 15% of the vote. And that is for the White Dwarf covers with Thunderphase.
Okay.
White Dwarf covers with Thunderphase. Do you remember that?
I do, yeah, I remember that.
And the second one was a joint second place is Monsters with James Holloway. Monsters with James.
Yeah, I can see that. That's a good interview, some good insights into Monsters, I think.
I enjoyed putting those Monster episodes together.
And again, we've talked about Paul Fricker's comment and the comment from your symposium, but I think James Holloway's comment has stuck with me as well. Again, another one of those things where you think, yes, I've always known that, but I've never been able to articulate it, where he said role-playing games are defined by their adversaries.
Yeah.
They're defined by the things that will oppose you, because generally the players will create their own characters, but the things that are there in the game book that are created for you are the monsters.
Yeah.
That's true, isn't it? In any game, it's what's the opposition? What's the problem that you're facing? Who are the enemies? Who are the bad guys?
The antagonists shape the game.
Yeah, that's right. The antagonists shape the game. It could be companies, monsters, aliens, whoever, but that's... Yeah, I thought I'd say those points where you go, that is very true. I've always known that.
But you've said it.
And obviously you think to say it. There you go.
And by a bit of a landslide, the one that our listeners enjoyed the most was Traveller Revisited with Mark Miller.
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
So a big banner headline. And, you get that Spotify all wrapped up thing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you like
reminds you of things you were listening to when you were drunk.
Yeah.
Why steps on this? Oh, I remember, I knew you were drunk one night.
Number 3 artist.
Yeah, listen to Tragedy too many times.
700% more people listened to that episode than any other episode.
Really?
So, but they did stick around, did they? Because the statistics would be on an even keel then, wouldn't they?
You'd come back and be 700% the next one.
So people came to listen to Mark Miller, heard us talk about hobnobs and never came back.
Yeah. I thought the Mark Miller interview was great, but then they started talking about hobnobs in incomprehensible accents, and I decided to never listen to it again. Yeah. Is this supposed to be fun?
Yeah, okay.
No, it's not supposed to be fun. It's educational.
And last and not least, we award the Groggy.
Yes.
Of the year. Groggy of the year, we award to a member of the Grog Squad who we think needs a special mention.
Yeah.
The worthy winners in the past.
Yeah. Go on. Open the golden envelope.
And the golden envelope. And it's Roderick Hamilton.
Organiser of MorpCon.
Organiser of MorpCon. I think it deserves a special mention because we said, didn't we, that this year we've had a relatively few conventions that we've attended. So having a regular face-to-face group on our doorstep in Manchester it has been good. It has had a regular pattern. And it just goes to show, I think, if you've got somebody who's willing to keep it going.
Keep it going, yeah. And it used to be Go Play and that stopped and Roderick kind of picked up the baton, so to speak, and carried on with MorpCon. And that's been a good thing, because without him, it would have just stopped. And for us, it's like you say, it's a face-to-face thing. We get 5 or 6 face-to-face games in every year with different people through that. And they sit on our doorstep, so yeah.
And it's a nice, friendly group of people who go there regularly. And some people who just happen to come along.
Yeah.
And we play a game. and go for a drink afterwards.
Yeah. What's not to like about that?
So thanks, Roderick, for keeping that going.
Yeah. A worthy winner.
Right, that's it.
Okay. That it for another year.
Another year, yeah.
Where do they go? Years. Where do they come from? But there we go.
2025 is going to be the year once we hit August. So we've been doing this nonsense for 10 years.
Feels longer.
It does. See you later, Blimey.
Goodbye.
There isn't another bit. So there you have it, 2024. As I'm recording this, I'm just on the brink of doing 2024's Grog Meet, which has been deferred to January 2025 for reasons I won't go into right now. But yes, I've not got a lot of time available, so I'm going to keep this one quite short, just to say thank you for listening, thank you for sharing, thanks for reviewing, thanks for staying with us all through this year, and particular thanks to the patrons, old and new, who have contributed to making sure that this thing stays on the road. Please, in 2025, if you do nothing else, pass it on to someone else. Yes, this is going to be the 10th year of the Grognard Files, and we've got a few things planned up our sleeves. But until then, adios amigos.